Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the current political situation in the country with, of course, the rallies and protests that have been organized earlier by PTI marching closer towards Islamabad. This is something, of course, that has been called out by the founder of the PTI previously as well and is being led by his wife. We have seen numerous images and videos coming out of different speeches that have been made on this front. But, of course, a lot of security measures have been put in place by the government in order to ensure that there is no May 9th like situation once again in Pakistan. And unfortunately, we have seen that incidents have begun to happen in various parts of the country due to these protests and blockages. And because of that, we see that there's also a life that has already been lost of a police constable, Mubashir, whose funeral prayers have also been offered, and who succumbed to his head injuries after protesters attacked him. And this is really unfortunate in terms of what has been going on for quite some time in the country and in the way that PTI has been calling for protests and such marches in the past as well, and disrupting the law and order situation of Pakistan. And so we're going to be taking a closer look at what this means in terms of what exactly it is that is the objective of such marches and protests, particularly when we see the involvement of his wife and in the ways that different protesters have been acting on the streets, especially with what has happened on May 9th last year. And so we're going to be also trying to understand that, and then of course the impact that it has on the current political situation, the way the government plans to actually deal with this particular party, and whether or not there can be any moves towards stopping that on a political front as well. So that's going to be the focus of our discussion today. And in the studios, as always, I've been joined by senior analyst Raja Faisal. We've also been joined online by senior analyst Furrukh Pitafi and political analyst Muneeb Qadir. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us and being a part of the discussion today. Muneeb, I'm going to start with you with reference to what has been going on. We've spoken about what the PTI has been doing in the past for many times before, and we've seen such calls for protests and rallies in the past as well. And every time it's a similar situation that almost always ends up in incidents of violence and unfortunate tragic incidents such as those that have happened earlier today. And so because of that, we see that there is a lot at stake in terms of Pakistan, in terms of the people, in terms of its economy, and of course the political law and order situation. So in that respect, when we take a look at this situation, what exactly is your opinion in terms of what the PTI is asking for and the means and ways that it is doing so to achieve it?
What the PTI is asking for is complete impunity, and what they want is immediate release of the PTI founder who's sitting in a Diyala jail. And it's because they believe that they are above the law of the land. It's because they believe that all those, dozens and hundreds of cases that are filed against their party members and they are meaningless. And even if they have merit, which even they know that those cases do have merit, it's the simply laws do not apply to them and they are above the law. So it's that sense of impunity, that sense of entitlement. And what they're demanding is, for example, the PTI founder's wife herself, and she's been repeatedly making speeches. Just a few days ago she made a speech which was extremely detrimental to Pakistan's relations with other countries. In fact, actually, I'd like to correct myself on that. No, I don't think that, the statement which the former First Lady made, Bushra B made, I don't think that that really harmed Pakistan's relations with other countries. I don't think that those harm Pakistan's relations with Saudi Arabia, for example, that really harm PTI's own relations with Saudi Arabia, with foreign countries, whichever countries that they have been implicating and, pointing their fingers at for the last at least 2 years. So, first of all, that, but I mean to say that Bushra Bibi did not leave any stone unturned in damaging Pakistan's external relations. And even now, I think part of the effort is to sabotage the meeting of, Belarusian President Lukashenko, which is taking place. He's on a 3-day visit in the country. But by and large, what they want is they really want to hold the whole of the country hostage to their whims. And their whim right now is, and what they're insisting on right now is that they want the PTI founder to be out of jail, regardless of whatever allegations that he's facing. Now, that has created a lot of disruption in people's everyday lives. I'm sitting here in Punjab, Lahore. I know that roads are shut down. I know that there are interruptions with internet connection and mobile network services, and we cannot always be held hostage. Every single time that PTI people decide to come out onto the streets. So, for example, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa chief minister, he should be concentrating on the fact that around at least 90 people have lost their lives because of, a lot of communal tension and other kinds of tensions which have been taking place in his province, rather than, paying heed to that, rather than performing his duty there in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, rather than listening to the people, what they want there, he's marching on. And then these people are, and then these people are also saying that they are ready to negotiate with the government because they know it's a flop show by and large.
Absolutely, but Muneeb, I also want your understanding in terms of the particular aspect of the release of the founder of PTI. And I understand that this is of course one of the prime demands that have coming out from the party, and of course this is what a lot of the rhetoric is also built on. But I want your take in terms of legally and politically what value that holds. There is of course a process that is taking place. There are courts that are doing their jobs. There is something that has to be followed in terms of the manner in which things happen. So I want your take on whether we can actually take a look at this in any of these ways, either rationally, legally, or politically, in terms of understanding that this demand in any way is something that the PTI can really ask for at the moment, and what it is that they're truly looking after.
This is a situation of emotion over reason. And when it comes to the law courts, emotion is not the guiding principle. It's not the guiding factor. Reason, and that too, not political reason, not other kinds of reason. Legal reasoning itself, that is what counts. So this is a pressure tactic on part of PTI. They have been posing themselves as this very popular party, and yes, they do have their fair share of loyalists as well. But they are trying to pressure the government, they are trying to pressure the state itself to somehow concede to the demands, to concede to their whims, and I don't believe that is how the law works. I don't believe that's how the rule of law works. So whatever they are saying, that our founder should be released right here, right now, does not matter what the courts say, does not matter what the law says, that has no legal weight whatsoever. And even they know that they are not arguing on the basis of the law. They know it because they are very much aware of the fact that the law is not on their side. They are very much aware of the fact that they are embroiled in so many legal technicalities, legal issues which are actually, and legal hurdles which are of their own making, that they cannot stand, or their narrative cannot stand, the test in a court of law. So they are trying to mobilize people. But then, you need a solid narrative to be able to mobilize people. You cannot be pointing fingers at this country or that political opponent or this political opponent, or coming up with conspiracy theories, or playing the religion card as Bushra B did just a few days ago. So these are mere, political pressure tactics. And how successful are they going to be, or even now how successful they are? I think the verdict is almost out. We can already see. I did a poll actually on my social media platforms where I have people of all sorts of political persuasions, and I really asked genuinely that even if you're a PTI supporter, just have your voice heard. Are you going to be, stepping out as part of this so-called final call? And more than 90% of people said that no, we don't intend to. So they can see through it. They can see through the loopholes and the weaknesses of the narrative that PTI has been building.
Absolutely. And Furrukh, I want your perspective on this as well, particularly when we, of course, see what the PTI is developing their narrative on and what their rhetoric has largely been about. But in terms of the kind of support that this particular rally and the previous rallies that we have seen in the recent past have been able to garner, I want your take on whether or not that is true, what Muneeb has just spoken about in terms of people really seeing through it. And then, of course, in terms of the party's objectives also being achieved in one way or the other, even if this is a pressure tactic with the courts or with the establishment or with the government, is that something that's really working or having an impact on any sort of political or legal gain for the party?
Right. Thank you very much for the question and welcome back. Regarding the situation, I think that More or less, I'm going to agree with Muneeb, but there are certain other aspects as well. Remember that when you talk about what is going on right now, there are, two power struggles. One, of course, that is playing out on the streets, where PTI is trying to actually, dominate or try to actually trip the government. On the other side, there's something going on within PTI as well. And I think that anybody who has been watching PTI for past 2, 3 months must be privy to it. That the party has a colosseum-like internal mechanism where everybody is competing against everybody else. And there was fear, Sana, recently that the party may start balkanizing. And I think that this seems to be the final push to reclaim the party, especially regarding who is going to be the voice of the party chairman who's sitting inside, or ex-chairman who's sitting behind bars. So it seems that right now it is the former first lady, the wife or the former chairman, who has actually asserted herself after being released from the prison. And here again, everybody who kept on saying that she is not going to actually lead the protest session, she is actually leading it, right? Regarding the religious angle, there seems to be something frightening that has happened, and you have to look at what exactly Bushra Bibi actually said to the media. It is regardless of what international aspects were there, her interpretation that what might have caused the estrangement of her party vis-a-vis the establishment is quite intriguing. She thinks that walking bare feet in Medina somehow signals that there is going to be Sharia in Pakistan, and that is what might have actually caused the estrangement. This is patently untrue, and this is the problem with any misdiagnosis. If you go to a doctor and there is pain in your stomach, and you ask the doctor, and the doctor is not informed, he says that okay, you are not actually sleeping this way or that way, or perhaps your feet are cold, or something else. If you misdiagnose, you ensure that the problem actually keeps on increasing. At this moment also, I think that many of my anchor friends will also be able to bear me out. The exact moment when the fallout actually started, when both sides actually started disagreeing, and it was primarily because of Punjab, it was primarily because of Usman Buzdar as the chief minister, and it was because of her forcible, endorsement of the man who was thought to be a bad administrator. That is why all these things actually went awry. And now somebody to actually come up and keep on misinterpreting history is sad. Now, when you talk about the, impact, I think that at this moment you have seen that there has been violence. One policeman has been unfortunately martyred, and there is a possibility that it might further escalate. So, one thing that I need to remind everybody that PTI has been doing it since 2014. It has repeatedly done it, and it is doing once again the same thing. Why is it that in the past they were allowed to walk scot free? Before May 9th, repeatedly similar things happened when Chairman PTI was actually going to courts. At that time, also, he used to actually drive among a human island, and always there was threat that they are going to attack the court if he is going to be incarcerated. And later on, we saw what happened on May 9th also. So there might be a teaching moment here. There might be a lesson here that if you keep on tolerating, people get emboldened. So today, whatever happens, I know that the government of Pakistan is going to protect its citizens. But the PTI keeps on, at times chest thumping and at times back thumping. That look, one person has actually shut down the entire country despite being behind bars. With your respect, this similar thing used to happen with Altaf Hussain, who was in exile. He used to make a call, and immediately the entire urban Sindh would actually shut down. So, is it a good example? Is it a good company to keep? Similarly, when you talk about COVID-19 or terrorism or fear of terrorism, similar kind of lockdowns actually took place. So is it a good example to emulate? It is not. Unfortunately, these people don't understand that your fight might be with the government, with the establishment, but you end up penalizing the citizens or residents of Islamabad and Pakistan.
Yeah.
If you think that you're voice of the people, is it the way you should be behaving? Over to you, Sana.
Right, absolutely. And Faisal, I want your perspective on this too, because at the end of the day, of course, there is a lot of discussion around what exactly should be the way forward. And the government, of course, has been doing its best previously and now as well, putting in measures, of course, in terms of safety and preventing situations like May 9th. But at the end of the day, we have already seen that this really harms the society, its people, and of course, the economy of the country. And I want your take on then, when we talk about such instance and the fact that it has been a repetitive measure of the PTI in particular, what then does that mean will guide the strategy or the approach in which the government needs to also deal with the party? How exactly will then we proceed in terms of the political involvement of the party in any sort of discussions or in the parliament in terms of any representation, be it under a different name? So I want your perspective on what approach do you think the government needs to take on this following such rallies and in the aftermath of such incidents which have made it quite clear what kind of a party this is?
Well, Sana, obviously, when we talk about what steps the government should be taking right now, of course, what we are seeing is that there is restraint when it comes to, of course, using the firearms or anything like that. Government is, of course, abstaining from it, and government wants the peaceful solution to it, and government does not want that somebody can simply come into the capital city once more, especially when a very high level delegate is in Pakistan, led by president of a country that has long standing relations with Pakistan, be it agriculture, be it defense side, or be it medical side. There are long standing relationships between Belarus and Pakistan, and we should be happy at this hour that Belarus president Alexander Lukashenko, he is in Pakistan, and there are many more avenues which are going to be opened for Pakistan's economy along with Belarus. So this needed to be celebrated, but right now, of course, people are doing else. And when it comes to the government is very carefully dealing with it right now. And the second option obviously they have is to somehow bring the leadership from the other side on the table for the talks. And once again, I would say, when it comes to the leadership from the other side, that leadership can only be assigned by somebody who's sitting inside, because power hub or grid station of PTI has always been considered as Imran Khan, and that is an open secret. And when it comes to talks of having many divisions within the party itself, I don't see they hold any kind of magnitude. Reason being, if we talk about the people at large, they don't give a damn about who's having what division and whatever, because to them the only this party revolves around only one man, and that man, whenever he appears, whatever the decisions he would be making, people would be standing with it. And them people who might be creating divisions within the party, I mean, they might not see themselves anywhere anyway. And when it comes to, of course, people that need to be talking to the government, them people must be assigned by somebody sitting inside. I think he himself is a leader. He is, of course, in the prison, and I'm pretty much sure that he must be listening to us as well, because PTV runs itself in the jails as well. And I personally would request that this is the time, assign the people, assign the tier 2, tier 3 leadership whom he trusts, and they have a very sane way of talking to the leadership on the government side. Especially there are people from People's Party who happen to be, of course, a party that is in the alliance with the ruling party PMLN. They have very good people who they can trust, who they can talk about how to find a way out of
Right,
this
but do you think
quagmire.
that that way would actually work? Like, I understand that dialogue at the end of the day is
Yeah.
essential to moving on, but will that be something even possible given the PTI stance? We've seen in the past as well, these efforts have been made, and we haven't really seen the kind of reciprocation from the PTI side. And plus, given the aftermath of May 9th and then such rallies that we are witnessing now as well, and we really hope there's not no unfortunate incident taking place even further. But then what exactly will be the stance of us engaging on such a political front?
Yes, Sada, if I keenly look at the track record of PTI protests, of course, there were many. In these protests, of course, they always came up with the demands, and the actual demands they went home with after the acceptance, they were of course merely 50% or less than 50%. They always went home with less than 50% or 50%. This time around, once again, I think clearly it should be, of course, ask them about what the demands they have, and them demands, if there are few of the demands that can be negotiated with, and there is a mechanism, like there are many demands related to that the election that needs to be probed. Of course, that is something to do with the election commission, and it can be said that a committee can be arranged that can one by one, all of the constituencies, they can deeply dig into it, and then they can, of course, probe what are the allegations on it, and they can simply say that that committee can be from multi-party and it can be from the former judges or former bureaucrats. They can be present in that as well. This can be put on the table. When we talk about Imran Khan's himself being in the jail, very recently he had the acquittal in few of the cases, and there were certain cases in which his bail was accepted as well. Them cases and any cases that are related to these kind of cases, they can be looked into, and they can simply say, okay, you can obviously come out of this, but you can move somewhere else, maybe in Banigala, maybe in Lahore if he wills, but he has to, of course, put a stop on the politics, his politics, for a certain time of period. His movement should be, of course, restricted, and these kind of things, they can be talked on the table. Whether they accept it or they don't, that is another question which can be, of course, later asked and later replied as well. But to me, I think at this juncture, what we as Pakistanis, what Pakistan as a state desperately needs is all of these political figures, all of these political corridors, they have to activate themselves for the talks rather than pouring all of the people on the roads. I mean, on the both sides of the people, be it police, be it the security service, and on the other side as well, be it the protesters. To me, all of them, they are Pakistanis.
Right.
End of the day, if anyone loses any sort of loss in terms of human cost, as we saw that Constable Mubashir, he gave life today. He gave life for what? He gave life for a promise which he had made, a pledge he had made to, of course, safeguard Pakistan at any cost. And today he was fighting with his own brothers to safeguard the country, and his own brothers, they shot him. So this is what I don't want to see on the roads. I want to see tables on the road, people sitting around it and talk peace.
Perhaps not on the road, but definitely having tables to have a conversation. Muneeb, I want your perspective on this too, whether or not that is possible when we take a look at PTI's track record, and whether that will be the only approach that the government is going to be taking a look at. There have been others that have been asking for calling a PTI and a radical party or an extremist party. And there have been the Punjab Assembly, I believe, has also been moved in this front, even in these particular days. And I want your take on how that will be a possibility in the future, and whether or not that's something that should be a possibility, given the fact that there are people who are still, of course, followers of the party, followers of their leader, and that there is a lot of tension in terms of the political aspects in the general public as well with regards to this particular party. And so I want your take whether or not that should be a way forward, and if not, then what should be the limit before we actually even decide moving towards that front for any political party?
So I think I don't really endorse putting labels on political parties and coming up with sweeping statements like they're extremists. But at the same time, PTI's brand of politics, which is centered around agitation on the streets and galvanizing people, and to what end? So that they take law into their hands. That just doesn't help. I mean, how much leeway can be given to PTI? And the kind of divisive politics and even a lot of times violent politics that they indulge in. And you just ask me, how many chances are there of PTI entering into negotiation? First of all, I'm usually told beggars can't be choosers. So it's
Right. I actually also want the take on what would be that red line where you call a party extremist.
where that political party does not accept the rule of law, does not accept the constitution, i.e., they resort to violence to make their points, to have their voices heard, to have their demands heard. They believe that their first option is to take the law into their hands, somewhat in something like what we saw on 9th May. And that is why the situation of PTI is very tricky, because I've just said the sweeping statements ought to be avoided, labeling a particular party simply as extremist. But at the same time, I've just said the PTI is making it very difficult because there are traces of that behavior.
Absolutely, I understand. Yes.
Yeah, the label of extremism or extremist.
Right, and Muneeb, with reference to that, then when we also take a look at the involvement of the wife of the founder of the PTI, we've seen that there has been a lot of discussion around her speeches, and you've mentioned that in the past as well. But I want to focus on the political credibility or political position that she holds, and whether or not that is again something that can be accepted or can be questioned in terms of her leading this rally, in terms of her making political statements, in terms of her talking to the protesters and the followers of the party in a way that she's coming on the forefront. Is that something that is part of any political rhetoric of a party and is acceptable in that sense?
I think they are doing, as in PTI and those sitting at the very top tier of PTI party, they are doing all of this deliberately. What they're doing is they have been denying that Bushra B, and for years and up until very recently, they have been constantly saying that Bushra B should never ever be dragged into any sort of conversations around PTI. She should never be dragged into any criticism directed at PTI because she's a non-political person. She's a private person. She's hiding, she is somebody who's extremely closeted, and she is a veiled person. So she should not be spoken of in a disparaging way. And I believe that nobody should be spoken of in a disparaging way. That yes, when you are involving yourself in politics, you are opening yourself up to criticism. And so what PTI is doing is they are putting Bushra B forward, and Bushra B keeps on claiming that she is the closest that you can come to the PTI founder who's sitting in a Dala jail. She says that because I'm his wife and I'm his beloved wife, whatever I say is to be taken as his word, not entirely mine. So at the same time, PTI has, I think, hashed a plan. All of this is deliberate. That if Bushra B ends up saying something which isn't really the wisest thing to say politically, PTI can distance itself from her words and say, oh, that's an individual stance, but that does not represent the stance of the political party as a whole. And like I said, I don't believe that Bushra B, negatively adversely affected Pakistan's relations with Saudi Arabia. She really, really, really damaged PTI's relations with Saudi Arabia, and then, her husband did the same with the United States of America. And ironically, these are the very same countries where they try to lobby, where PTI tries to lobby, where they try to lobby for support. And so it was an own goal. It's always an own goal. But, this is the strategy, what I think is that they've put Bushra B forward, who's taken a very prominent role in the last few days. Just last night, she was delivering a speech, a person who used to claim that she was a very private person and she was not really accustomed to making public speeches anyway. And just today, she's also released a video that we are not going to move away from Islamabad. And just now I've seen that, the convoy has entered into Islamabad despite Section 144 having been imposed. And what she's saying is, the former First Lady, she's saying that we will stay in Islamabad regardless of what the law says, regardless of what orders have been carried out from the courts and whatever the police say. We are not going to pay any heed to it. We are not going to move until and unless you release the PTI founder. So that sense of entitlement, again, that was reflected in Bushra Bibi's speech just a few days ago when she said that people, you need to be thankful to the PTI founder. He could have been watching television, sitting in his TV lounge. He could have been enjoying his life, traveling around the world, globetrotting, but he's here to serve you. No, he's here to serve his politics. So this kind of emotional blackmailing, not just, in a violent way, that is very much there, because of which, the police constable, Mr. Mubashir, has lost his life. But other than that, even emotional blackmailing is very much a part of PTI's politics. And, religion card that Bushra Bibi uses is also very much part of that same package.
Right, absolutely. And Furrukh, I want your take on that as well, particularly in terms of the political mileage and credibility of Bushra Bibi, and also add to that, where do you think that this will then head towards, given the plans that have been called out by her, given the kind of direction that is being set, and in the ways that, of course, we see things unfolding, where will this take this particular protest, and then what sort of aspects do you think can happen with regards to the PTI founder, and then, of course, the political involvement of Bushra Bibi? Furrukh, can you hear me? I think unfortunately we haven't been able to make contact with Furrukh, but I'll come back to you, Furrukh, as soon as we can hear you. But Faisal, same question to you. I want your take in terms of how will PTI actually navigate the involvement and the participation of Bushra Bibi within this political realm, following, of course, this particular rally and whatever unfolds, and what exactly do you think can possibly be the future of this rally? What can be the potential ways that we need to look out for?
Yes, Sana, first of all, I'll talk about what is the future of obviously Bushra Bibi's statement. I mean, in past we have been seeing this, and there is a case as well against Bushra Bibi right now on the same context that she has come up with these kind of statements. That needs to be probed, and I am pretty much sure that it is not part of the policy of PTI as a political party. But if somebody wanted to gain something out of this kind of statement, then they must have asked Mohtarama Bushra Bibi to do this intentionally, so that eventually if somebody probes it, then it turns out to be that Bushra Bibi was not part of any political party, and she was not an active member of the political party. In her own speech, she said that she's not a politician at all. She is, her statements are going to be her own statements and not of any political party. So I think they are sound enough and they are smart enough to understand this. So they have kept the party safe in this context. When it comes to Bushra Bibi as an individual, as wife of obviously Imran Khan, the PTI former chairman, then obviously there are questions that need to be asked, and in that context, of course, it can always be said that Bushra Bibi at that time was being someone whose husband was inside the jail, and she was obviously resorting to these kind of statements to, of course, catch some attention or whatever. But overall, of course, I believe that this kind of statement, it is always diminishing, not only for a political party but the whole country as well, and that is why we have been seeing that government have been strictly speaking against it, and that's how it should be, because Saudi Arabia is a country, and America, for the sake of concern as well, we have a very large number of overseas Pakistanis from US who are very successful, and we have bilateral relations that span since the day one between both of the countries, and that should never be put on stake just because of one political party. There should always be country first, not the political party first. But when it comes to this very procession which we are seeing, a long march which is heading towards of course the capital city, and as Muneeb has rightly pointed out that their direction right now, they have put themselves on the main road that actually enters towards the Islamabad. So in a way they have knocked on the doors of capital city. Where do they end? That matters a lot. But meanwhile, of course, in the power corridors, in the power sidelines, of course, we will be seeing that there will be lots of talks with the people who are assigned. Once more, I would say, somebody sitting inside the jail, he has already people who are assigned already. So there will be lots of talks, and to be honest, I mean, the only solution is the talks, because this number of people, when they come to the capital city, and at the same time when we know that capital city is equipped enough to safeguard itself from any of the long march or any of the processions, then we know that better is to talk rather than putting people's life at stake.
Yeah.
So I believe there is a solution, and that solution is on the table, and eventually sanity would prevail, and we will be getting a solution, if not tonight, but if not tonight, then tomorrow maybe we will be heading towards a solution.
Right. Furrukh, I hope you can hear me and we can get your insights as well in the discussion. I want your take on where this is heading towards, particularly when we take a look at what has previously happened and now with Bushra Bibi's involvement, and then of course in the way that the court's proceedings are also something that many are looking at, particularly on the 28th. I want your perspective on what exactly will this unfold into, and what sort of a future it holds for both PTI and the government, and whether or not it will create any more legal or political space for the party.
Right. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me now. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Regarding your question, Sana, earlier also, because you also added another important aspect regarding Bushra Bibi's involvement, I wanted to actually start by dispelling a couple of ideas that were floated in this discussion. The first one is that the party has one leader, and that's why there are no factionalism or power jockeying that is going on. That is absolutely not true. We have seen the evidence. Why? Because the party's leader is sitting behind bars, and of course he might be watching us, but there's always a chance that he might not be getting the latest news. Similarly, there's always this element that whatever he says, he talks to somebody, that person comes out and then talks to media. So the workers and supporters are always skeptical. Now, because of that, there is another element regarding this, the dialogue that also keeps on putting everything in doubt. Repeatedly, we have seen that various people have tried to actually speak on behalf of PTI, Umar Ayub, Gaur Khan, and then Shah Mahmud Qureshi, Azam Sawati. And everybody was then attacked by party's own members repeatedly. This is what has happened. So the fact is that there is some kind of power tussle within the party. And we are seeing that playing out live in front of us. Now, add to it also the sisters of the former chairman, right? So there is a lot of tussle that is going on. If right now, as was suggested, the leadership of the party is actually directing all this, then we have at least this frame of reference that somebody can talk to the government and there is going to be some kind of diffusion of situation right now. But if that is not the case, then what happens is that everybody keeps on trying to play their own game, and in the end, things go out of control. And we have seen already, if blood has already been shed while these people haven't practically actually entered Islamabad, then things are going out of control, and it is not great news. Regarding the importance of speech or dialogue, I mean, I'm always in support of dialogue, but tell me what do they seek to get out of it? If they are asking for release of their leader, I remember when PTI was in government, when Imran Khan Sahab himself was the prime minister, at that time, many a times people went and said, why don't you release Nawaz Sharif or Maryam Nawaz? And he would always cite the due process. So right now, there is a due process. He is incarcerated because of the due process. He was indicted. He did certain things, or perhaps failed to actually, disconnect himself from certain actions that might have actually led to where he is right now. So, do you think that now, because dialogue is in the hand of those people who are actually now out of power and they're protesting, that's why any legal process should be abandoned in support of political convenience? So these are questions that are going to be there. I don't mind any dialogue. I hope in coming days we find a permanent solution to this kind of disruption. But when it comes to Bushra Bibi and her role in the party, I'm not. It is not my place to say what role she should be playing. The only thing is that I've known Imran Khan for like 24 years now, when he was not even a single member parliamentarian, right? I've known him and I've known him quite personally as well. But the problem right now is, and I don't doubt his worldview, or I don't think that his political acumen actually is lacking. But when I listen to that protester or that statement of Bushra Bibi, that actually gave me worry that if this is the kind of worldview that is going to inform the party's policy making, then the party and this country both are going to have a crash, and that is not a good news. So I am hoping that at least brinkmanship stops from both sides. Remember that no matter what happens, the lightly some people can actually shrug off the death of one person. I don't think that that is so simple that nobody wants to give their life. That life was taken, right? So my humble submission is right now you and I and residents of Islamabad are being punished for something that we did not do. We did not have any skin in this game. But it is us, our children are not going to school. You must have seen the video of that little child whose father is carrying practically a newborn baby with oxygen and physically, walking him over to the hospital because ambulance cannot go to the other side. That kind of state of affairs is not acceptable. And I think that PTI, of all the parties, when it was in power, it used to also could criticize similar kind of protest, and we used to also could criticize them. So it should heed its own advice and take a step back.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Furrukh, for those words. And thank you, Muneeb, for joining us and being part of the discussion. Thank you, Faisal, for always being part of the debate as well. And of course, a lot remains to be seen in terms of what exactly is going to be the future and the way forward. And we're, of course, going to be hoping for more peace and order on the streets of Pakistan and for the people of Pakistan. Whether or not that is the case, of course, remains to be seen. But the government has taken all its measures and will continue to do so. And we hope that all political parties and decision makers also take the route of sanity and common sense and dialogue, which will help Pakistan move forward. That's all that we have from the debate today. We'll now see you tomorrow.